So today I wanted to talk about time and different perspectives. So and I'll be walking through a couple different exercises that you can try. So it may seem a little more technical than sometimes, but I think you'll have fun with it. So when I think about either different goals or if I'm trying to work through some experience that's been challenging, a good rule of thumb is to check things out from different perspectives. And so one way of thinking about that is you can think about something from the first person where you're seeing it through your own eyes. And very often I talk about seeing something from the outside, which is sort of a third person perspective or an observer perspective. And it's good to step into, as much as possible, a very objective or impartial third person perspective. And then, of course, we could also check out second person perspective, which is when you sort of step into the position of whoever else you're interacting with in that situation. And if I don't quite feel, if it's an argument and I don't feel comfortable stepping into that person's shoes, so to speak, I might at least look at the situation from their angle and look over their shoulder and see what it's like. So those are the standard kind of three, what we call perceptual positions that you can move through. And very often moving through those, you'll start to get more perspective, more balance on the situation. If there was a disagreement, it may start to soften a bit, or you might perceive more choice. And I want to talk about a different type of perspective, which is our perspective in time, which is a wonderful fluid thing that we can move through much more than you might imagine. So I would say kind of the first position in time you could think of as now. I'm in this moment, and both the future and the past may extend out in different directions from now, but I'm in this moment. And like what time is it? It's now. That's what time it is. And even if I'm thinking about something that happened in the past, I might slip back into it as if it's now, even though it happened in the past. And you'll notice that I gesture to this side, and that's where I keep my past. You may keep your past behind you. It might be on either side of your body. But what you'll notice is as I'm sort of guiding you through this talk, you might notice, like when I talk about the past, it may come up for you somewhere in relation to your body. It might be behind you, it might be to your left or to your right. And the same thing for the future. The future may radiate off in a particular direction in front of you or to one side. Not so often. Occasionally somebody will have their past kind of behind them, but it's pretty rare. But I want to talk about something that's kind of interesting, which is, so I just mentioned that you can think about something from the past and actually you're stepping into it as if it's now. So you're in the past, but in the present tense, so to speak. We can also look at the past from this present moment. So when I think about something that happened when I was a little kid, I might be seeing it as if disassociated. I see it way off in the distance. People will say something like, it was a distant memory, and it's way off in the past. And at other times, somebody might say, it's like it happened yesterday. And what they mean is, for them, that experience, even though in chronological time, it happened many, many years ago, for them, they're keeping it so close that it's as if it just happened or happened yesterday. Oh, it's as if, I remember it like it happened yesterday is one expression. And the same thing can apply to how we think about the future. We can think about the future as being so far off in the distance, or, you know, oh my God, it's just around the corner, right? It's, this thing is going to happen any minute now. And again, I want to point out that the places I'm gesturing are the places that how my brain codes these orientations to time. But you know, mine is sort of a V. Future is on one side, past is on the other side. Some people, it's a line from their front. The future is in front of them, past is behind them. So as I'm talking, notice where these things come up for you, because then you can have some more choice in terms of how you use them. There are a couple other expressions that I find really interesting. One is, it's never too late to have a great childhood or to have a happy childhood. And, you know, what that means to me is, instead of always going back and perhaps ruminating on things that didn't go the way that you like, you can go back and relive them as if they did happen the way that you like. And you can actually start to imagine what it'd be like to have had that childhood that you wanted. You know, you can add experiences and you know, allies that might have really supported you. You know, I remember meeting a good friend of mine when I was around 20, and it turned out that we both grew up about 10 minutes from each other, but we didn't know each other because we were in neighboring towns. And I often thought, wow, it would have been so wonderful to have met him when I was younger. And I could begin to imagine how all these experiences would have been a little bit different having him around at an early age. So that's an example of, you know, for me, that enhanced my experience of my past, even though he wasn't there. Now, I'll talk about another thing that you can actually try out. A lot of times things don't seem so serious with the passing of time, right? And we have expressions like that as well. It's like, oh, in time, it won't seem like such a big deal. And very often people are being literal of their descriptions of how they're thinking of something. Right now, something might feel like a big deal, like you're making big pictures or a circumstance is looming over you. And yet, in time, you'll see it perhaps in a smaller perspective, way off in the distance, and it will be a distant memory. And what you can do is perhaps try a little experiment. Take something that perhaps does bother you or still bothers you, and imagine it way, 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 way off in the past. Imagine that it happened, you know, 10, 20, 30 years ago. Now, for some of you, that's before you were born, but imagine it happened even then. And it may not seem quite as serious when you look at it that far in the past. And so that's something we can do. We can take something that we're experiencing and imagine that it happened years ago, and that it's something that you've learned from and that you've grown from, and that you've learned to handle in many ways. And considering it that far in the past can actually change our experience of it in the present, which is really fun and interesting. And there's another expression that I really enjoy, which is, and I can't remember where this came from, but I love this expression, that the future is not what it used to be. And I just love that. There's so much irony in it. But there's some truth to it. If you think about it, your experience of what you imagine the future to be changes over time. You know, maybe you had, and in terms of humanity, this is the case. You know, at any given moment, where, you know, we all imagine certain things in the future, and sometimes the future, when it's realized, may exceed what we expected, and sometimes it may fall short. It's really interesting to think that we're living in the future. We're living in our younger selves' future. We're living in previous generations' dreams of the future. And I'm sure many things weren't even entertained that we're experiencing now. Now, I'll leave you with one kind of fun experiment, which is to think about a goal or a dream that you've had. And for a moment, imagine that you're 4 or 5, 10 years past achieving that dream. And that you're looking back to now, to when it was just a dream. And then you're looking back at all the things that you did that led up to that dream happening. And you enjoying it and moving through it and learning from it. And that thing that had once been your future is now in your past. And then when you're ready, you can come back to this present moment and notice that, oh, I haven't achieved that yet. And yet in my mind, I already have. I've gone beyond achieving it and I've looked back at it. And you may hear some horns because there are horns here. So again, with that last one, what I'm inviting you to do is think about some goal that you've been entertaining. Maybe there's something that you want to start, something that you want to learn, a trip you want to take, just something you want to pursue. And then imagine yourself 3 or 5 years past already having achieved that, and looking back at all those years that led up to it, all the steps that you took, and looking back at it fondly and saying, wow, I really did that. That was great. That was fantastic. And enjoying that sense of accomplishment, satisfaction. And then when you're ready, you can come back to this now, because there are many nows. You know, in that experience, we're stepping into the future as now. In the beginning, I talked about first person, second person, and third person observer, and those are 3 different perspectives that you can sort of dance through to create more balance in whatever you're going through or whatever you're considering. And then I talked about different ways that you can begin to explore your perception of time. And again, you may organize it in your body and around your body differently than I did. And yet you can do the same experiment. You know, you can even use the language that I was using to guide you, you know, that imagining that you're in the present and yet it's now, and that you're looking back into the past when you were pursuing something. So I encourage you to practice that and explore that. I think it will add a lot of richness and a lot of choice, actually. And you know, whenever I feel stuck, one of the first things I like to check out is, have I explored these different perceptual positions, these different perspectives, both in terms of first, second, and third position, and also in terms of time orientation. So have some fun with that. And until I see you in the future, now, tomorrow.